you're on.
Bienvenidos. Welcome back to Clase Virtual. Anyway, this is for Español 2. And les echo de menos. I miss you guys. I hope you're all well. I hope that you're having a safe and easy time at home. We're going to work a little bit this week with Unidad 4, Lección 2. I have a list up here, basically vocabulary, and then we have 3 different types of preterite verbs that we'll be reviewing. Also, make sure that you check that Google Classroom because I'm going to be listing our assignments on there. If you don't have your book, if you left it at school and you haven't been able to pick it up, I am going to scan the pages in the packets and etc. and have that available for you to download and print out at home, okay? All right, so I'm going to go over the grammar in this little video. There are 3 types of 3 types of preterite that we're using. And so the first type, we call it an I to Y change. And it's also sort of our chancla verbs, if you remember that term of the chancla verb. Okay, and as you know, a chancla is a sandal, right? So let's go over those verbs. Now, the way that you recognize I to Y verbs is they typically end in either EER, AER, UIR. Those are the typical ones. So let's take, for example, caer. Caer means to fall. Okay, so caer is an ER verb. It's going to be totally normal, except when we get to the L and the eos forms. So if you remember, your ER and IR forms in the preterite, they go iste, io, imos, isteis, ieron. Okay? So let's try that. Our little song, remember, iste, io, imos, ieron. So those are the endings that we're going to be using, but we are going to have a slight spelling change. So let's try caer. We go caí, caíste, caímos. And by the way, we add extra accents on these I's just to emphasize them. Caísteis. All right, but then when we get down here to number 3, what's happening, and I believe we talked about this earlier in the year, maybe we haven't. Let's pretend, just pretend for a moment that this is a normal verb. It's a normal preterite verb, okay? Now what I'm going to write is incorrect, but I'm going to show you why we have to change it. Okay, so let's pretend that it's normal. These are wrong. Now, I know they're wrong because I've never seen a word in Spanish that has 3 vowels in a row. That does not happen. And also, I know that this little guy is a weaker vowel, and the A, O, and the E, right, the A, E, and O are stronger sounds. So if I leave that I as an I, he's a weak sound and he'll get lost. And it'll come up something like cow and karen, and which is strange. So what they like to do is when they have this weak sound in the middle of 2 strong vowels, they change it to a similar but stronger sound. So now we change that I to a Y and we have cayó, cayeron. And it still sounds like its original verb and none of the sounds get lost, just slightly changed to make sure that nobody is stepped on. All right, repeat after me, please, at home. Here we go. Caí, caíste, cayó, caímos, caísteis, cayeron. Okay, so when you're doing these verbs, we call them chancla verbs because if we put little lines around them, once again, it's not a bota anymore like you learned in Spanish 1, but now we call him a little chancla because he's kind of a sandal. And that's just to remind us where those changes take place. Remember, these guys are going to go from I, the I will change to a Y. Other verbs that you might see like this would be leer or construir. Look for those 3 letter combinations at the end of EER, AER, or UIR. There's going to be some other in our vocab list, okay? All right, so that is our first set, the chancla verbs. Let's go on to kargarzar. Okay, so kargarzar are another set of verbs that are a little bit irregular in the preterite, and so they're going to have another spelling change. This spelling change is only going to happen in the yo form. Only in the yo form, okay? So, for example, well, let me just give you the changes. In the car verbs, the C becomes a QU, the G becomes a GU, and the Z becomes a C. Now, I know that doesn't make much sense right now, but let me give you an example of each one of those. All right, so let's take sakar. Sakar ends in car, right? Has that little car at the end. Now, you know how we were using ER, IR verbs for the chancla verbs? For this one, for the kargarzars, they're all AR verbs. So we're still using those AR endings in the preterite of e, aste, o. Amos, aron, same verbs. Now I'm putting the vosotros up there, but don't worry too much about it. We just need to be able to recognize it. Okay, so for a verb like this, I know that that C is going to become a QU. And there's a reason for this as well. Just like the reason for the change in the I to Y verbs, there's a reason for this. So let me just go ahead and do sakar, and I'll explain the reason in just a second. Excuse me. Okay, so just like before, I'm going to pretend that there is no change, and I'm going to just write the wrong thing. Remember, this is not correct, but I want to explain why we make that change. Okay, so let's pretend that there's no change. Now here's how it would sound. Sase, sacaste, sacó, sacamos, sacaiste, sacaron. One of them doesn't sound the same, does it? This one, sase, sounds totally different than sacaste, sacó, and the rest of them. So Spanish loves to be consistent. And so on this one, they're going to change that C to a G, to a QU, to a QU, to make it sound like the rest. Now, the reason it's changing is you have some consonants, when they're followed by some vowels, they make a strong sound. Like here, it's followed by the O or the A, and it makes that k sound, sacaste, sacó. It's very strong. But when it's followed by the E sound, that softens the C. And so that's why it comes out sounding like sase, which is different. And they don't like that. So they're going to change this C to a QU to toughen it up a little bit and make it sound like the rest of them, okay? So let's try those. Por favor. Saqué, sacaste, sacó, sacamos, sacaisteis, sacaron, okay? And that's why you're making that change, because you want that regularity in sound. We want them all to sound like they're the same verb. Okay, so that's sakar, that's a car verb. A gar verb that you'll hear would be jugar. So the G will become GU. So same thing here. Okay, let's try that one. Por favor, repitan. Jugué, jugaste, jugó, jugamos, jugasteis, jugaron. Okay? And once again, we're changing that just so it'll sound like the rest of them. And then finally, sometimes you'll have verbs that have that Z, the ZAR, Z-A-R, and we'll change that Z. We're going to soften it a little bit and change it to a C sound. So for example, almorzar. Okay, so that Z is going to become a C. So he sounds like this. Running out of board. Okay, so let's try saying that one. Please repeat. Almorcé, almorzaste, almorzó, almorzamos, almorzasteis, almorzaron. Okay, so remember with these little guys, with kargarzars, it's only that yo form, only the yo form does that little spelling change. And the reason we're doing it, once again, is to be consistent and make sure that they sound like the other forms of the verb. All right, at this point I would ask preguntas, but you'll have to send me preguntas per email if you have. And please don't hesitate if you're confused at all. Okay, our last little group is called irregular stem, and we have done some of those. All right, just a second here. Okay, so for irregular stem, we've already done a whole chart of these. So some of these will not be new to you because I think I introduced them a little bit early this year, which thank goodness I did. But they're the ones that have these strange combined endings. So these little guys, their endings are like putting AR, ER, and IR together. So remember we had estuve, estuviste, estuvo. All right. So you might have remembered those. For example, estar is estuve, estuviste, estuvo, estuvimos, estuvisteis, estuvieron. So we've had those. Excuse me. We also talked about how some of them, if they have a J in their stem, if they have a J, then it will be eron instead of ieron. And I'll do a couple for you on that one. Okay, so for these, we're just adding a few little verbs, and you can find them on your list, in your vocab list, as well as on page 232. But for example, if we have querer. So all of these irregular stem verbs, they have weird stems. Remember that we talked about what was a stem. We said that the last two letters are called the ending. And usually we take those off and we add stuff on. But whatever's left behind here is called the stem. In Spanish 1, most of your stems didn't change until the springtime when you started doing stem changer verbs. But in the preterite, we have a whole grouping of these guys that just have weird stems. I can't give you a reason for this one. This is just the way the Spanish gods decided, woo, this is how the verb is. Okay, so this little guy, he has this weird stem of quis. Quis, and you have to memorize the stems. And then we're just going to add on those endings. So say it with me. Quise, quisiste, quiso, quisimos, perdón, quisimos, quisisteis, which you won't use ever around here. Okay, and quisieron. Quisieron, perdón. Okay, so remember, their endings are combo endings of all of your regular preterites, plus you have to memorize your irregular stem. Now, here's the nice thing. It's kind of a pain in the you-know-what, but the nice thing with these guys, No acentos. Okay, absolutely none. So at least we don't have to memorize accents for these. We just have to know the combo endings. All right, I wanted to show you one of these where we have that J, so you know what I'm talking about. We did one, I believe, earlier in the year. Decir goes dij. That's his stem, dij. So let's try it. Por favor. Dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos. Lots of dots on that one. Okay. Dijisteis and dijeron. So you could think of it as the J takes the place of the I. So if you have a J, then you don't need that I, okay? All right, so I hope that explains the verbs. Please let me know if you have any questions or any problems, and look for our assignments for this week listed on our Google Classroom. I miss you guys. Take good care. Lava las manos. Wash those hands, please.